All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us today. He is the creator of the Leprechaun franchise. Please welcome Mr. Mark Jones. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
It's such an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. As I said before we recorded, I'm a huge fan. I love the franchise. Part 5 and 6, they were a little iffy, but, I can work around that,
Listen, I liked them all. I mean, maybe except one I thought was a little bit of a misfire. But, as far as the ones with Warwick and the character, it kept it alive. And, I was happy that they kept making them.
Yeah. So I guess my first question would be, how did you get into writing and directing?
Well, I right out of high school, I always was really interested in animation. And I actually, at one point, wanted to maybe be an animator. I just wasn't a good enough artist. So I got into animation studios like Filmation Studios, and as a guy who Xeroxed the drawings onto the cells. And then, of course, as I was in the studio, I'd run around and talk to everybody, and they basically said, you should become a writer. Don't become an animator, become a writer. And so I actually started writing animation. And I worked for Hanna-Barbera, and I worked for Patty Freely, no longer around Filmation. I wrote Scooby-Doo's and ended up working for Ruby Spears, produced a lot of their shows. And that led me into writing for primetime television. I went over to Universal for Glenn Larson and worked on shows that nobody remembers, BJ and the Bear, Sheriff Lobo, Fall Guy, over at Fox, and became a writer and producer in television, but always wanted to direct. So I said, well, I got to write a horror movie. I want to direct something. So I ended up writing Leprechaun, and then around 92, Trimark decided to make it and let me direct it. So that's sort of, so I was a writer first and then got into directing.
Yeah, that's really strange that you bring that up, because I was going to ask you, how did the franchise get started? So you just answered that question.
Yeah, well, I knew that I had a better shot at getting my first directing job if I wrote a lower budget movie, and horror seemed to be easier to sell at that time. And I decided to come up. Nobody had done Leprechaun. Everybody had done Friday the 13th and Halloween and Valentine's Day, and I said, no one's done Leprechauns. And the Lucky Charms commercials were playing all over the place. They still do. And I said, let's take that creature. Everybody knows it, and let's give it a character and make it kind of an evil little leprechaun. So that we could really, we could come out in St. Patty's Day. So I did it.
Yeah, you see, I like that, and I tried to look for you online, and I tried to read things about you, and I said, how come everyone is basically ignoring this guy and ignoring his talent? Like, yeah, Michael Myers is cool. He's my favorite horror icon, hence my YouTube name, The Myers Fan. But I'm like, why is everybody? What about Mark Jones? This is great.
Well, I appreciate that. They've done. I mean, there's articles on Leprechaun, and I think Entertainment Weekly. They did a big article. Here and there it comes on, and I've done some podcasts and a bunch of stuff, but you have to sort of find it. But yeah, I think it's one of these films. When it first came out, everybody beat me up really badly, and I don't think they quite understood that I was making a horror movie that was a little bit of fun. And if you really look at the first Leprechaun, it was kind of it was colorfully lit. Even the interiors, we built sets, and if you look at the kitchen interior, it was like yellow and green. It was kind of like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, because I used to write Scooby-Doos. And I kind of wanted to make a live-action kind of Scooby-Doo kind of a horror movie. And and I succeeded, and the kids really liked it. I think that's why it got popular. Is it wasn't, a real scary slasher, killing movie. It had some fun, and he rides a pogo stick and a bicycle, and and the Leprechaun was a character that had jokes. So I kind of did that on purpose, and when it came out in the theaters, it ended up getting a big release, especially for, a low-budget horror movie. And it surprised everybody on how well it did, and the reviewers and everybody never quite understood it. They took it too serious, and and it's now sort of become sort of a cult classic. But we never took ourselves serious. We knew we were having fun. We weren't trying to make an Academy Award-winning movie, but everybody was great. Jennifer Aniston was the first one. I have been actually interviewed a few times on biographies about the guy who I discovered her, or at least they gave me credit, because she had really done nothing, and that was her first movie. And after Leprechaun, she got Friends and became a superstar. So, it was a fun picture, and I think, it's sort of just, nobody quite understood it in the beginning, but I think they do now.
Well, I understand it, and I think it's freaking great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun making it, and everybody was great to work with, and I just spoke to Mark Holton, who played Ozzy, the Ozzy character. I just had a nice conversation Sunday with him, because they brought him back for number 8, which is Leprechaun Returns, that Sci-Fi played, and they went back to the original 25 years later at the same farmhouse, and I thought that one actually they did a good job, and they brought Mark Holton back. Of course, he got killed, but so I think they got the right sense that the kids liked the first Leprechaun, and so I thought going back, and they used a new guy for Leprechaun, and I actually thought he did a very good job. I mean, Warwick Davis is iconic, and he'll always be the Leprechaun, but I thought this new guy did a good job.
Yeah, I guess, he was alright, but you know me, I'm biased. I want Warwick Davis back, and that's just the way it is. I guess my next question would be, did you intend on turning this film into a franchise?
Well, when you're shooting a movie, you're just hoping you get through that movie. I'm hoping, I had to hope they weren't going to pull the plug. It's the war of making movies. But I did set it up to be for a sequel. I mean, all horror movies, you think, well, maybe we'll get a sequel, maybe not. But I never thought we'd end up with 8 of them. But I did consciously try to make the Leprechaun have a personality and a character, because I thought that can be the thing that people will want to see again. And so I certainly wanted to have a franchise, but you never know. I mean, I was, when they wanted to do number 2, because the first one did really well, I said, okay, great. I said, we'll be lucky if we get the second one, maybe a third one, but then it just kind of, took off, and they did well, very well, direct to video, the last bunch, and I was happy. I mean, yeah, you want it, you never assume it, but you certainly hope that it becomes a franchise.
So, what did you think of Warwick Davis when you first met him? What was your impression of him?
Well, he was great. He was in England when we were casting, and I'd seen him in Willow, and I said, oh, well, that guy is great. He's a good actor. He's a great actor. So I talked to him on the phone a number of times, and then we actually flew him out. I hadn't met him, and he came in, and I guess we met at the hotel and had lunch, and he brought his wife, Sam, and they were great. I mean, the minute I met Warwick, we became very, very good friends. He has a great sense of humor, and I was very pleased. I said, oh, this is going to be good, because, I had no idea. I mean, we're flying him out from England based on phone conversations, and obviously I saw his acting, but I was very pleasantly pleased or surprised, because it turned out that he got right into it. He understood the character. We worked on the script on production rewrites. I met with him, and we sort of brought the character even more comedy and kind of more fun to the character, and that was helped a great deal by Warwick's contributions. And but he's great. I stay in touch with him, and actually we were close to actually doing another project, but that fell. It got delayed because of the craziness of the movie business.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I think you are a very professional guy. You really are. You've earned my respect already. You already had it, but you've earned it even more so now because you're able to give credit to these other people that have sort of come in on your territory and say, well, Leprechaun Returns, it isn't so bad. And, a lot of people, they don't really want somebody else coming in on their territory, but you were nice enough to say, oh, well, it was okay, and you said they did a good job. So I thought that was very professional of you, and I'm truly impressed, even more so now than I was before this phone call. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Listen, you always can look at things and get myopic and say, oh, they should have done this. I mean, there are certain things, certain directions they took it, I would have done differently. But I look at the big picture, and it kept the franchise alive. And like everything, I had to beg and plead Trimark to make the movie, and they had really no interest. And they said, well, we'll give you a small budget, and it'll be direct to video, and go ahead. And then when the movie turned out and they tested it, and they said, wow, we can go theatrical, and they went theatrical, and it did really good business. Then all of a sudden the studio wants to, it becomes more of their baby. They didn't want anything to do with it until it became successful, and then it was like, oh, well, now we can make this a big franchise. So it's interesting that they only kind of want to give me credit when it's negative, but they try to sort of take a lot of credit for the thing working, but it's all based on, I think, the original concept. But I just look, I love the business and I have fun, and there's really no reason to complain on any level of this business if you're working or your movies are being remade or they're doing sequels. I just have a good perspective about life, and they give me my money and my credit every time they make one. So
okay, I guess that's good.
So yeah, I did have a good deal on that.
Yeah, like I said, I've always thought you were the man. I wanted you to be credited from day one. And
well, listen, they can't take it away. I mean, they can't change the name on the checks. They still have to send them to me. I'm sure they hate doing it, but
well, you deserve every penny of it. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I appreciate it. I really do. I like to hear that people like that movie. We're out in the trenches, and we shot in Simi Valley in the worst cold you can have in California. It was freezing, and people were, I was making Jennifer run around in little shorts, and she had to come back in a van with a heater and blankets and then run out to do it. So you think about all the trials and tribulations of making a movie, and then you sit back and you hear people like you and other fans go, well, I really like that movie, and you go, oh, it was all worth it. All the pain to make that movie, and then you find people liked it. So that makes me very happy to hear that stuff.
Well, so my next question would be, which cast member did you enjoy working with the most, and why? Do you have a favorite one, or?
You don't have a favorite one. I mean, all my leads. I mean, Robert Gorman, the kid.
Yeah.
Not a kid. He was great, professional. Jennifer was wonderful. I mean, we had a great relationship. She had a great sense of humor. I'm kind of a funny guy on the set, and you know, she got my humor. Ken Olin was great. He had a good sense of humor, and Mark Holton, who played Ozzy, you know, I had used him on a Superboy episode. I was a showrunner on Superboy, the live action came in on the second season, and we used him. And he also played Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was Francis. And I said, I'm going to do a movie, and I have a perfect character for you. And about 3 or 4 years later, I called him up, and so you know, we still maintain a friendship. So he was great. The cast was all great. I think we were all having fun. And I don't have a negative thing to say about any cast member. They're hard worker. Jennifer was professional and on time, and you know, it was her first movie and my first movie as a director, and so we were sort of new to the game, and we just were so happy that we could make a movie. So I think everybody got it. Everybody was, you know, we're making a movie, and it was kind of a fun movie. So you know, I mean, in my going on and making other movies, I don't have as many nice things to say about all my actors, but I will say the Leprechaun people were, that was a very good, tight group. Warwick was great. I mean, everybody got along. We used to go to dinner after the movie, and before we shot, all of us would kind of do a dinner together a few times. So
that's very cool. That's awesome. And like I said, I just love the franchise now with the newer ones like Returns and what's the other one, Leprechaun Origins. Maybe not so much, but the first 6, you know, with Warwick, and like I said, I'm biased, and I don't mean any offense to anyone, but I'm a straight shooter, and Warwick Davis, when it comes to playing the Leprechaun, he was the man and still is the man. I hope I can get in touch with him someday. I've been trying, but he's in England and I'm over here in the U.S., so I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, yeah, he's the Leprechaun. I mean, number 8, Leprechaun Origins. I have my issues. First of all, it was, you know, was it really? It was just a creature, and it kind of went back to. Actually, my original script was more horrific and less personality. I rewrote my first one to bring in the humor and the character. But I thought, you know, Leprechaun Origin, they just got off track on what that was about. And I have to say that was probably my least favorite, but it was because, you know, they didn't really do, you know, they didn't make the Leprechaun do what the iconic Leprechaun should do. But aside from that, you know, I thought when they went Leprechaun in the Hood and Back to the Hood, I had fun with that. I thought that was, you know, I was, you know, I said, well, okay, they you know, I maybe Leprechaun in Space is not my favorite, I would say, of them. I mean, I thought the others, I think, I thought that was a little gimmicky to bring him into outer space.
Yeah.
But you know, overall, I think they all worked. They all had a great fan base, and you know, so to me, you know, I was just happy they kept making them.
Yeah, I agree. I would love for them to do another one with Warwick, but I don't know how that's going to work out. I heard that he turned down the last idea for the Leprechaun Returns. He didn't want to do that one.
Yeah.
And my next question was going to be, with the exception of being a producer, you weren't really involved in part 2. Why is that?
Well, here's what happened. Actually, you know, the first one was made, and it came out, and it took a while to come out. We made it. We finished it in '92, the beginning, and Trimark was a new company, and they weren't real experienced in going out theatrical, and they kept testing Leprechaun. They tested it, and it tested really well, because they were going to go direct to video. And then they said, well, maybe that test, maybe it's not right, because it seemed to test too good for them. So they tested it again, and it tested even better. So they said, hey, let's take it out theatrical. This could really work. So it took almost a year, and by that time I had written a script called Rumpelstiltskin for Dino De Laurentiis, and he ended up getting a hold of the script, and he wanted to make it, and he gave me a 3 times the money of Leprechaun. And my producing partner, Michael Prescott, who was with me on Leprechaun, it was a much bigger, better deal. So we said, well, let's make that movie. And then when Trimark came back and said, well, we're going to make the sequel, I was like, and I was supposed to direct the sequel. Actually, I was supposed to write and direct the sequel. And I was going down the road, making a deal with Dino, and I thought it would be a bigger, better, deal. So they said, well, can we still make it? And, you can come in as a producer. And I said, fine, go ahead. And so that's how that kind of happened. I think the studio was fine, because what happens is they kind of like to grab ownership, and I think they were relieved that I had another movie to do, because then they didn't have to, because I feel that Leprechaun is sort of my baby, and I think that all studios, when they see that they might have a hit, they want to take it and do what they want to do with it. So that's how so I made a deal, and then a deal that any ones they make, I'm involved in, financially, obviously, and it was fine for me, and I went on and did Rumpelstiltskin, and just continued on and let them run with the franchise. So it was sort of, I didn't, and I never thought they would do, 8 of them.
Yeah.
I always figured they would just do the second one, so that's why I did that. I said, let them do number 2, I'll go do Rumpelstiltskin and other things, and then, of course, they just kept making them, which was fine. But there was no reason to try to come back and say, let me do, number 5, number 6. They were smaller budgets, and they probably didn't really want to pay me what they would have had to pay me. I think some of that was a contractual deal. When you sign up, I think they felt they can get people to work for less money than they'd have to pay me.
Well, I mean, if they didn't have the money, that's one thing. But if they purposely didn't want to pay you, then that's where I have a problem. You know what I mean? Because I thought it was a very well thought out story, the original. I like the others, the other 5, but the original was good. The character, the Leprechaun, sort of hinted at that maybe he sold his soul, because he said, I traded my soul for my gold, and so I thought that was interesting. I thought you did a really good job. He was just so evil. I just wanted him to die at the end of the first one. I just said, get rid of him. He was terrible.
Yeah. Well, listen. I think every studio wants to always make pictures as least expensive as they can, and make as big a profit as they can. So it's the normal course of business. I don't get mad about that, but I just think it was and we never knew when they were going to make another one, and I just I went off to do other things, so they just ran with the franchise, and it was fine with me, and I knew they wanted to when they went into when they did Leprechaun in the Hood, and they wanted to bring in other people to do that, and that was fine. That was fine with me.
Yeah, now the Hood thing I'm not so cool with, but I was like, you know what? Oh well, it is what it is. I don't know. I didn't like that whole Hood concept, but
Yeah, that was there. I mean, the other thing is, when I was involved, I had more control, and I think I would have probably wanted to take it in a different direction, and they wanted to go their direction, and I think I didn't want to fight them, and they didn't want to fight me, so I think that was part of the reason. It's just, let them go do it and hope that, they're successful. And that always happens, the creator has their vision and the studio has theirs. And then every year they bring on new executives that come up with their idea of how to do it. And, it becomes a cluster. And so at some point you let the studio go ahead and do what they want to do and you move on.
I guess I can understand that, and I definitely have a question for you about doing another, but I'll wait till I get to that one. My next question is, what was the best thing about working on the original? What did you enjoy about that?
Well, I have to say, I was in animation as a writer and a producer, and television as a writer and a producer. I'd never directed, and I always, as a kid, in high school, I made 16mm movies. I had a Bolex camera, and I was really interested in making movies, too. That was, along with, obviously, I had a little bit of animation love. But my big goal was to be a director. And I just never had directed any television. I did later, after Leprechaun. But and I wanted to direct, and that was the excitement of my first being on a set as a director. And so that, to me, was overwhelmed everything. The fact that I could walk on a movie set and I had big Panavision cameras, and we were shooting in 35mm. In those days, you shot on film, and that was the big boys. And it was just the excitement of making my first movie as a director. So that sort of, plus I really liked the script. I mean, I liked what I was shooting, but I have to say that the big excitement was the fact that I was just given my first shot as a director. And you never forget your first directing.
Yeah, and I have to say, and I know you must be tired of hearing it by now, but you just did such a wonderful job. I don't have them on Blu-ray yet, but I do want to get them on Blu-ray. I only have it on DVD, but it's just great. I usually watch them every year around St. Patrick's Day. Even though I don't really celebrate St. Patrick's Day, it's just a little tradition that I started back in 2003. I said, I'm going to watch these on St. Patrick's Day. That's just my thing.
Well, you know what? You should get the Blu-ray. I will say they did a terrific job of transferring from the high def. They took the negative. We had a 35mm negative, and they transferred it to the high def Blu-ray, and the color and the lighting. They did a really good job. It really looks much better. It looks like how we shot it. So I would recommend. I think they had a box set that came out with all 6 of them at one point, or all 7 of them. In Blu-ray, so they have them. But I would definitely the first one. I think by the time they got to number maybe even 4, but certainly 5 and 6, they shot those in 16mm, and I don't think it was as good a quality because they were making them cheaper and cheaper. But the first Leprechaun is beautiful on Blu-ray.
I definitely will get it. It's because you recommended it. So plus I want to add it to my collection. Now they say that the Leprechaun actually has a name. They say his name is Lubden. Did you intend on naming him?
No, I think this is the first time I've been asked this, and I could dispel that question. I don't know where they came up. They did a comic book, I think, after the Leprechaun. They did Malibu Comics, I think, did like 4 comics of it, and somehow the name Ludin, or whatever name you said, no, I had a name for Leprechaun, so you might be getting an exclusive. The name I had named him in the script was Basil.
Wow.
This Ludin came from, and it's again that's the great trickery of the internet. Everybody thinks if it's on the internet it's true, or if somebody said it, it's true, but you're getting it from the guy who sat there in 1988 in his office all by himself till 4 in the morning writing the script. So it was Basil, B-A-S-I-L.
Okay.
Basil. So that was the original name I had. I don't know if we ever used it in the movie. I do not think we did, but it had been in a draft of the script. So that's actually his name. Just so you've got the scoop on that.
Because the name Lubden has basically now been associated with him, and I'm like, well, I wonder. As you were telling me this, I'm thinking, I wonder, is he okay with that?
Well, I think for some reason the comic book that they did, like I said, they did 4 of them, and I think that's where the name came. So maybe the writers of the comic book decided to name him, and it sort of got out there as the name. But my original for Leprechaun and Warwick was Basil.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get used to that. I was used to Lubden, so you'll have to excuse me on that one. It's gonna take me a minute. Let that sink in.
Yeah, well, listen, that's okay. There's a lot of urban myths out there that people think are true until they find out. So anyway, that was the creator's original name.
Okay, and that's cool. And I was gonna ask you, had you seen any of the sequels? And I guess you have. And then I wrote here, if so, what did you think of them? I don't know if you have the time to give me your thoughts on each one. You can just do it quickly if you don't have the time.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, obviously, number 1's my favorite. I thought Leprechaun in Vegas was okay. I think for what they were doing, it was kind of fun. I didn't love number 2 because I thought, number 1 went theatrical and had a big fan base, and then they did number 2, and I would have done a whole different story.
I would love to hear it if you don't mind sharing.
Well, what I can remember, what I was going to do is have a leprechaun. You start with the feet, and when he died in the well, and you have the leprechaun come back and walking around, and you pan up, and it's a female.
Oh, wow.
Because there have been nobody talks about a female, and it's Warwick in drag playing his wife, who resurrects him.
Wow.
And they go together on a killing spree. And I thought that would be great because even in the folklore of leprechauns, there's never really been female leprechauns. And yet, so I was gonna, and I actually talked to Warwick about it. He got a kick out of it. That he would sort of do 2 parts. So so his wife was gonna come looking for him, drag him out of the well, resurrect him, and then they go on a killing spree. I guess like Chucky and the one with Chucky and his girlfriend.
Right.
And I thought that would have been good, and that's what I wanted to do. And then Trimark wanted to do, which I thought was a little pedestrian, and the wishes, the 1,000-year-old sneeze 3 times.
That sounds silly when you say it out loud.
Yeah, you know what happens? The one thing I love about this business, executives are executives for a reason. If they were writers, they would become writers and directors, but yet every executive thinks they're a writer, and they all want to be creative. So they get together and they say, oh, let's do this, and then the creators and the true writers, like myself, we sort of butt heads. And I said, okay, if that's the way you want to go ahead, because I was off doing, another movie. But I thought that would have been really, really fun to bring his wife, and maybe one day I'll do a Leprechaun movie with Warwick, as long as I don't use the character that Trimark owns the copyright on. I can do another Leprechaun movie if I want to. Maybe I'll do a female Leprechaun. Make her evil and wicked, and it could be fun.
So
that was my idea.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, so you're saying, you're telling me that you can't use Lubden, aka Basil, anymore? I mean, is that?
Well, I can't. Well, no, I own profit participation in all of the Leprechauns, but Trimark owns the copyright, which means I can't just go make a Leprechaun movie and use Warwick if he looks like the Leprechaun. Even though I helped design it with Gabe Bartolas, who was the special effects and the designed the Leprechaun. I can't use their Leprechaun because technically Trimark owns it.
But
I can do a Leprechaun movie if I have a different looking Leprechaun.
well, what if you say it's the same one? He just looks slightly different. You can't do it like that.
Well, I think you'd have a lot of attorneys and legal letters.
Oh, what? Come on! Oh, come on! What?
You know business? No, because the idea is you can't, and I mean it's good in the sense that someone else can't go make a Leprechaun movie with Warwick and then not pay me or not pay Trimark. I mean, that would be. It also protects us. We own that character, just like. You can't make a James Bond movie unless you get permission from the owners of James Bond.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I mean, Trimark controls the copyright of Leprechaun, and so they have to give permission or get paid if somebody wants to use Leprechaun. And I'm giving you the short strokes, and I'm not an attorney, but. So yeah, you can't because the likeness, is owned by I guess myself and them. I mean, I participate, but they control at this point the I guess the copyright. So otherwise, then everybody could just go make Mickey Mouse cartoons and Donald Duck and not have to deal with Disney. So. It's a protection. It's a copyright protection.
Well, would you consider talking with them or down the road, or do you think, or what?
Well, you never know. I mean, at one point, I mean, when they went back to the original story of Leprechaun, which is the last one, Leprechaun Returns, they actually did go back to the farmhouse and they even brought in my Ozzy character and all that. So could I, every now and then I think I should just say, look, let me take it. There's a whole fan base out there, and let me bring his wife in, and that could be and start like another kind of franchise with him and his wife. But those things. I mean, there's so many executives come and go, and they, they probably don't even remember who created Leprechaun. So it's the ups and downs of the movie business. It's hard to get studios to do anything. I did create a new franchise that I was talking to Warwick about called, it was a leprechaun who got bitten by a vampire, and it was called Vamprecon.
Wow.
It's a tiny little vampire leprechaun, and we had a script and we had a deal, and actually if you look up Vamprecon, you'll see a lot of press, and there was a big lawsuit that we had to sue an attorney producer who claimed that he was attached to it, and so the money people during the lawsuit went away. We won 100% in about 30 days. We completely won the lawsuit, but by that time the money people they pulled out. So it's out there on the internet. It was but that was a picture, and we're still actually going down the road with that, trying to get that made, and hope and possibly bringing Warwick into it at playing the Vamprecon. But he won't look like Leprechaun, but he'll be a crossover between a vampire and a leprechaun, and it's a cute little fun little horror movie. So
this won't be Basil, aka Lubden. This will be someone else.
Well, yes. I mean, it will be a leprechaun who gets bitten by a vampire, and he becomes a vamprecon, and it will be our own character and a new character. Whether people assume there's millions of leprechauns or there's only one leprechaun, that'll be up to people's imaginations. But we were talking to Warwick about playing the character, and he would bring his own take into what he would be if he turned into a vampire, and it would be a lot of fun. And if the audience wants to believe that that's the original Leprechaun, there's nothing wrong with that. We can't stop that. But I would be able to make that on my own without Lionsgate involved, who now owns the franchise.
Well, I certainly hope that you can talk with them, because I know you want to do Vampiricon, and I respect that, but I was hoping that you would at least close this. I mean, I believe that anything's possible. I know you're getting older, and so, but I was hoping that you would at least close this one and perhaps kill him, if you want.
Well, listen, there's all kinds of ways. I mean, even when you kill a franchise character, if the audience wants it, you find a way to bring it back. I'd love Leprechaun to keep going.
Okay.
Listen, I like the checks.
I understand that.
I want to kill off my own. Yeah, listen, you never know. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff we're doing, and age is all relative. I'm still out there and having fun and doing stuff. So hopefully I'll end my life on a movie set. I'll be 92 years old directing the final scene in a movie, and then I'll just go to sleep. So I'm never getting out of the business.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I guess I would ask you, were there any strange or interesting moments on set? Did something strange happen on the set of that film, the original Leprechaun?
Well, I'd have to think that a lot of interesting things happen, when you're shooting a movie. Nothing that pops in as strange. I'd have to search. I mean, it was a good crew. We had fun. The studio, like all studios, they were the hammer, and they were always, shoot faster and better and quicker, and they're always, and they would send people down to watch for 10 or 15 minutes, and but that's normal stuff. I mean, we really kind of had our free reign to do what we wanted. I mean, I will say once we're shooting, there wasn't really any interference. It wasn't like, they were down there saying, shoot this, shoot that, or anything. I can't really think of, it was actually a pretty good experience. I've had worse experiences on other pictures, as far as crew and things like that. But I got to tell you, Leprechaun was, I had a great DP, Levy Isaacs, who was a great mentor, because he was an older guy. He had experience, and I was a kid, basically. And, he helped, get me through it. I met a good friend. We're still friends to this day, David Price. He came in as a co-producer, and he was on the set to sort of, because it was my first time directing, and he had directed Children of the Corn 2 and did some other movies. So David had more experience, so he was down there, but to sort of keep an eye on me, but we became good friends. And there really isn't anything negative that pops in on Leprechaun.
And if the Leprechaun could fight another horror icon, who would you want it to be if he had to fight somebody?
Well, I've seen different things on the internet. I mean, there's Chucky is one that comes about, and I think that might be interesting, because Chucky's a doll, and Leprechaun, they like little things and tricycles and trinkets, and they collect things. Actually, when he was counting his gold coins in the first Leprechaun, and it was at night, he had like a little camp thing. I think I put some props of teddy bears and things like that. We didn't go full bore, but in the original script, he had like toys. He had a lot of toys, tricycle, teddy bears. That's why he drives a little car, and he drives a tricycle and a pogo stick. So I sort of gave a little hint that they're fascinated with, you know, toy-like things, and so it'd be natural for the Leprechaun to steal a Chucky doll, and so that might be interesting. And they're, you know, they're both little people.
Yeah.
So that, you know, and but I think Universal owns Chucky, and so they'd have to make a deal with Lionsgate. But that would be a fun one.
And I guess my final question would be, if you were able to do one more Leprechaun film, what would it be about? Of course, I'm speaking of the original, you know, the original concept of Leprechaun. You know, Basil or Lupton or whatever. What would you have him do now?
Well, you know, that's a question I'd have to think about. I mean, as a story, as a creator and a writer, it's hard to say. I would like to, you know, I mean, he's done a lot. You know, he went into Vegas, he went into the hood, he went, you know. So where do you bring him? He went to outer space. It's hard to say. I mean, I think there was an idea I had of him getting involved with what's the character? I don't think he's called Death, but he carries a sickle, and he's got a black cape, and you don't see his face. Maybe it is Death. Or a banshee. I think I had an idea, because a banshee is kind of a ghost-like spirit, and I think it has to do with some Irish folklore. I might bring in some other characters like brownies. Actually, there's a history to brownies. They're kind of evil little creatures, and maybe go into some, you know, folklore, and bring in some of those guys to either work against him or with him. It's hard to say. I think you could go so many places.
Yeah. I just love that character, and like I said, I think you did such a good job, and Warwick did such a good job, and you know, I definitely hope you do one more with that character. That, like, I know my opinion doesn't really matter when it comes to the technical stuff, like the copyright laws and all, but I'm hoping that you at least do one more with that character, and then after you do that, you know, then I'm satisfied. You can pretty much do what you want from there. I just want one final movie with Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun, doing what he does. That's kill people. So, you know.
Well, you know, listen, Warwick did mention one of the reasons that he stopped. His kids were young, and he said, when my kids get a little older, like, you know, 18, 19, 20, I want to go back to horror movies. He was at the point, I think, where he was doing other stuff in England. He does plays and things like that. But he has kept it open, and I will stay in touch with him. And I always thought it might be interesting for Warwick and I to come up with a great story, and then go to Lionsgate and say, hey, we'll come back. Warwick and Mark Jones will come back and do the iconic the last Leprechaun or whatever, and that may work. And I think he has got such a huge fan base. We need the fans to get out and start that rolling, that they should bring Warwick and myself back. And we do have one great one in us, and it might be his return, because he did say I'll get back into horror, but he wanted to take a few years off, which is one of the reasons, at least that I've read about, that he didn't do Leprechaun Returns.
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I was just going to say the actor they use, and forgive me, the name slips my mind. London Porco.
Yeah, something like that. I think it's Lyndon Porco. I think.
Porco. I think was a
right.
Anyway, I thought he did a fairly good job, but he kind of did Warwick. He studied Warwick, and he did, because he was supposed to be Warwick 25 years later. So imagine Warwick and I coming back, and I'd like to bring Robert Gorman back. You know, he's now an adult. He's probably in his 30s, Ken Oland is still around. He would maybe come back. I don't know if we'll get Jennifer. She's gone off to bigger and better. We couldn't pay her salary, but bring those people back,
right?
And sort of do the definitive Leprechaun. I'd love to do it, and I'm sure we could come up with a great story. So we just maybe I should have my agents call Lionsgate and say, hey, why don't we try this?
I would love that, and I just want to add one more thing before I go. First of all, I want to say thank you for giving me this interview. Like I said so many times, I love the character. I don't know how many more times I can say it, but I absolutely do. And so many people have asked me on YouTube, why do you keep making these Leprechaun videos? What is it with you and the Leprechaun? Nobody cares about the Leprechaun. Like, I get some negative feedback from some fans, but I love it, and I sent it to you in the email. I sent you the whole playlist of Leprechaun videos that I had done, and
I appreciate that. I do, and I'll tell you, you always get negative. People take things too serious, and I know this. I get the same thing. Oh, it's a stupid franchise. It's a cheesy movie. But if they look at it in the right vein, like you have, and there's so many people that just have fun with it. Like I said, don't take it that serious. And but you'll always get. Look, it's very easy for people to be critics behind their keyboard.
Yeah.
And let them go out and make a movie that gets 8 sequels. That's always my comeback. But I learn. So people will. I've had people absolutely hate Leprechaun, and I've had people absolutely love it. And I'm happy to say more people love it than hate it, at least that I've experienced. But any franchise, it's the nature of the beast. People love to be critics. And as I said, it's always easier to put something down than to say you like it. And,
that's true.
But I appreciate guys like you because I think you get it, and obviously enough people liked it where they were able to make 8 of them. So that's always my answer. Somebody's renting the videos. They play them on Sci-Fi all the time.
Yeah.
Same day it becomes a marathon, and people enjoy it, and there may not have been a Jennifer Aniston without Leprechaun, because if she hadn't been in it, maybe she wouldn't have gotten Friends. Not that I'm trying to take any.
No, I know
Jennifer, but she's a sweetheart. But it's interesting, and but I appreciate the fans that liked Leprechaun, and we might make another one, and I might and if I ever get Vampircon and I get work to play it, that could start a whole nother franchise.
Because I like I said, I'm about the biggest fan on the planet. I really believe that. I was gonna ask you about merchandise. I was gonna say, do you have anything at home? They never made any Leprechaun figures, did they?
They made promotional figurines. I got a few of those. They like I said, they tried a comic book. I think they had 4 issues. They never did. I mean, there's T-shirts out there, but I think most of them are not made. They're probably bootlegged. But they didn't really merchandise it like they should have. They should have had a video game. There was talk about that at one time. Collect the coins and stuff back in the 90s. I have certain things. I mean, original artwork and storyboards and stuff like that.
I would love to see a picture of those figurines. Maybe you could sell me something, because like I said, I love the character. I'm not into returns or origins, but the first 6, oh my goodness, especially before he went to space when he was on Earth. I mean, that was great storytelling. This guy was in Vegas and he was just killing people, and those limericks were fantastic,
Yeah.
It's like,
well, listen, I'll dig up what I have, and I'll see what I can show you, because I've got a few things. I should have kept more, but again, at the time, you never know how big it's going to be, and but yeah, there's I've got a few things sitting around.
I always thought he was human. Like, I always perceived, I said, well, maybe he was human at one time, and then maybe he turned that way. I wanted to do something where he was human, like maybe in a poor village in Ireland or something, and then maybe he ran into this old guy that turns out to be Satan, and then Satan gives him the gold coins, and he's, I had to think of something. People like me, we're always coming up with something,
Bad idea. That's not a bad idea. I like that. That he was once just a regular person, and then he does something evil, and Satan turns him into an evil little leprechaun. You never know.
Well, sir, I don't mean to take up any more of your time. It's just been such a pleasure talking with you about this franchise, and I want to thank you so much. As I said, I hope you can at least do one more, and then I promise my thirst will be quenched. Just do one more, and maybe bring him up out of that cement, and you can acknowledge the hood, but don't say too much about it, and
well, that wasn't my idea. They were on their own on that one.
Yeah, I know.
All right, listen. I hope I do, and I'll be certainly. I'll keep you abreast if we put something together. You'll be the first to know that we're going to do it. But I'd love to do the final or another Leprechaun. Bring Warwick back. I think that'd be fun.
Well, I was going to ask you. If something does happen where you are doing another one, would you be willing to come back on to my channel?
Sure. Anytime.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Okay, and you send me a link to get to your stuff when you get this out there.
I definitely will, and I wish you good luck, and pun intended, by the way.
Okay, Darnell. Well, listen, I appreciate it. You're very good to talk to, and it goes very much appreciated that you're a fan of Leprechaun. So stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was my interview with Leprechaun franchise creator Mark Jones. I definitely hope you enjoyed it. You can follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Oh, yes, and of course, Instagram at the MyersFan25. And thank you for listening. And you never know, Lubden may be out there, a.k.a. Basil. How about that? We learned that the Leprechaun's original name was intended to be Basil. So, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.